know that being a teacher has lots of facets. I'm not going to talk anything about curriculum instruction, assessment, or planning today. I'm going to talk about everything that you don't know. Reason why I want to do that, I would hire brand new teachers. I would be telling them about these things that I thought they knew, and they would say to me, Dr. Ray, I don't know that. Nobody taught me that. So about 10 years ago, the deans of colleges of education came to Page. They asked us for some help with professional learning in areas that we had seen were a need. This was one. I wanted to work with that. So let's kind of get started, because I think that what you'll see right here is what your professors teach you. And your professors teach you that they want to make sure that your book bags are all lined up when they come into your classrooms. They want to make sure that they are seeing that you understand classroom management. If they came into your classrooms look like the reality at the bottom of this picture, they're not going to be pleased. What I want is I want to make sure that you have a career in education where you know every bit of information that you possibly need to know to be successful. I want you to leverage your career to get the very best out of it. I don't want you to come to me with your life like this after 30 years in the profession and say, nobody told me that. Last evening, I was working with a group of doctoral candidates. They all had about 18 to 20 years of experience. And they said to me, I didn't know this information, and I had been in the schools this long. So y'all are going to have the jump on that. So the first thing that young professionals always say to me is, I don't even know how much money I'm going to make. Yikes, you need to know how much money you're going to make. I sent a link, and Ms. McKinney has provided that link to you. It's the Page New Teacher Guide. And on page number 34 of the New Teacher Guide, you're going to see the state salary schedule of Georgia. It looks like this. Across the top is degrees. You have a T4 degree, also known as a bachelor's degree, T5 a master's, T6 a specialist, T7 a doctorate. So if you go across the top, you will see that teachers in each of those classifications make more money depending on their degree. On the left-hand side, you will see the steps that Georgia provides a step increase in salary for teachers. This is probably one of the most important things that I'm going to talk to you about today, because we have 181 school districts in Georgia. There is one state salary schedule right here, but every single school district has a local supplement on top of the state salary schedule. The highest paid school district in Georgia is Atlanta City Schools. They're going to start their T4 teachers out at a little over $53,000. There's 16 metropolitan Atlanta school districts that pay the most in Georgia. If you look at those 16 school districts, you will see 75, 85, 285, I-20, 400 running through those school districts. Those school districts have a lot of local money. Those local monies come from entertainment, eateries, and hotels. So you can understand why those 16 metropolitan Atlanta counties surrounding the Atlanta city's area ends up bringing in a little bit more money. I'm going to give you one example of that. Cobb County Schools was delighted when the Braves Stadium was built. Most of you have been to the Braves Stadium. The first 75 days that the Braves Stadium was in operation, that's without the little stores and the restaurants of the Battery. They were not built yet, but just the stadium itself. They gave Cobb County Schools $800,000 after the first 75 days. Well, now we have 5 years. Think of how many 75 days that we've had in 5 years with the Braves championship, the Battery, all the entertainment and the eateries, hotels around there. That's why their salaries have been able to go up, because they're bringing in more local taxes. You're supplemented in your pay scale from every single school district if you have extracurricular activities. Extracurricular activities may be your coaching, it may be band, orchestra, chorus, it may be as an elementary school teacher, after school programs that you are working with. So that's how you increase your local supplement. You can find your local supplement as well as the state salary schedule by going to every single solitary school district website and clicking on the HR link, and it will tell you. Lots of times it's broken up by the state salary schedule and by the local supplement, but it'll have one number at the bottom where you can see what the salary is. But most importantly, you need to remember, in Georgia, the higher your degree going across the top, the more years of experience coming down the left-hand side, the more money you're going to make. There's 181 school districts in Georgia. They are not all equal. So let's kind of talk about the salary as such for a beginning teacher with a T4 degree in Georgia, has not received an advanced degree, average salary $56,287. So how much money are you really going to make if you were just making $39,092, which is the state local supplement, the state supplement without the local supplement on top of it? Your gross salary is going to be $3,091. Your federal tax is $316. Your FICA, that is an and or in school districts. And remember, I told you not all school districts are the same. Not all school districts are equal. And we'll talk more about FICA. Medicare, $44.82, state tax, $146, TRS, $185, and your net pay either $23.97 or $23.52, depending on if FICA is taken out of your paycheck. So how much money will you make? And the first thing that I always hear is, you know what, my roommate is a business major and they're going to make a lot more money than me. So I wanted to dispel that rumor just a little bit. You're going to sign a contract for 190 days. Your average salary at $56,287 with just a T4 degree, your average daily pay, $296. That average professional works 300 days. They don't have your summer breaks. They don't have your breaks throughout the school year. They don't have the winter holidays off. They may be making $83,684, but their daily rate of pay is $278. So being a teacher is not a bad gig after all. When will I be paid? Most school districts are going to pay you on the last working day of the month. So the last working day of the month, I want you to think about, because most of you have been student teachers and you've been in the schools enough to know, think about the last working day of the month in December. And that's the last working day with students. And I think that you'll say, well, it's not the last day of the month. It's either the 17th, 18th, 19th, depending on the school district. That is the last working day of the month. That is the day that you are going to get paid. Then I want you to think about the last working day of the month in January. The last working day of the month in January is either going to be the 29th, 30th, or 31st. It is more than 4 weeks. We got a window of time there that is about 6 weeks. I wanted to make sure that I brought this out to you right from the very beginning, because when I was a principal, I would have some of my first year teachers that would come to me, and it would be January 12th, and they'd say, Diane, when are we getting paid? And I would say, remember, it is the last working day of the month. And they'd say, but I spent all my money. It was Christmas time. So I quickly learned to start telling my first year teachers, you know what? I think that you need to know this up front, remember that you have a 6-week period of time. So what they would do is they would take their money that had been deposited into their checking account, move it over to their savings account for 12 days or 13 days, and then move it back into their checking account so they could just monitor themselves and their spending and make sure that they had money to last through January. I wish I was bright enough to see that at the very beginning, but I didn't realize that my first year teachers did not know that. So what about the summertime? Well, the summertime, you're going to either be paid on 12 equal paychecks or 13 equal paychecks, depending on the school district that you go to work for. Now, if I asked you what month you're going to start your career, you would probably say, probably at the end of July. Yeah, that's right. The end of July is when you're going to start your career. The reason why you start at the end of July is because of pre-planning. But as a new teacher, you go down to the county office for either 2 days or 3 days, depending on the school district. And you work down there at the county office. You sign your life away on 1,000 forms, and they tell you everything that you need to know. So you've got a job that starts in July, and if the school district that you go to work for pays you on 12 equal paychecks as a first-year teacher, you're going to get your first paycheck that last day in September. So I want you to kind of look at that. If you're independently wealthy and you can start working in July and go to the last day in September without getting a paycheck, that's great. I was not independently wealthy. If the school district that I went to work for told me that I was not going to get paid that last day in September, I would have not eaten. I would have starved to death. So it's important that you find out how the school district that you go to work for is going to pay you. If they say they're going to pay you on 13 equal paychecks, that means you're going to get your first paycheck at the end of August. So let me just make sure you understand that, and I'll give an example. At one time, my school district did not pay first-year teachers on 13 equal paychecks that first year, just on 12. I'm walking to the buses with this great music teacher, Zach White, and Zach said to me, Diane, I'm happy I'm a teacher. I know that I got the best career. This is going to be a wonderful school year for me, but I've never worked so hard for a paycheck in my entire life. And I said to him, Zach, do you know that you're not getting paid today? And literally, Zach White did turn white on me. And the first thing he said was, I've got a car payment, I've got an apartment payment, I've bought new clothes for school, and I've used some money to decorate my classroom. And I said, you need to call somebody. Well, Zach had a very nice grandmother, and grandma came to his rescue. So how do you find out what a school district is going to pay you and when they're going to pay you? Well, you can find out what they're going to pay you by looking on the HR website. But nowhere on the HR website is it going to tell you if you get paid with 12 equal paychecks or 13 equal paychecks. You have to pick up the phone. You have to call the school district and say, I'm going to be a first-year teacher in your school district this year. Are you going to pay first-year teachers on 12 equal paychecks or 13? When I ask novice teachers how many paychecks they want, the first thing they always say to me is, I want 13 paychecks, Diane. So think about that and put that down in your notes as something that you need to make sure you ask about. How much will I work? Well, the typical teacher has a contract of 190 days, except for if you're that first-year teacher and you have those extra 2 or 3 extra days. You need to read your contract, and you need to make sure that you see reflected on that contract the extra days that you are going to work. It's 180 instructional days, 10 teacher work days. We have both traditional and balanced calendars in Georgia, and lots of times we have hybrids right in the middle of these two. I think it's important to point out that Georgia asks by guidelines that each school district records on their website the calendar for the current year and for the next year. that helps you as a novice teacher, because what I have found with young professionals is you're in weddings, you have a wedding, you move from apartment into a house, or apartment into an apartment into a house, you have babies, you have weddings, you move again. All of these things take time away from the instructional day. Look at your calendars every single solitary year and look for the next year if you're trying to plan anything. I hired this wonderful first year teacher. Her name was Christine Gray. And I said to her, this is the day that we're going to start. And she said, I can't start that day. And I said, why? And she said, I'm the first college graduate in my family. My parents have paid for an all expense paid cruise for my entire family for 10 days, and we will not be back until about halfway through that first week of school. And I said, Christine, you have to make a decision. You're either going to be a teacher or you're going to go on the cruise. Well, unfortunately, was going to be a teacher, but unfortunately her parents lost all that money in setting up the cruise for her because she was not able to go. So know what the calendar is. 181 school districts in Georgia, 181 different calendars, and it will benefit you in the long run to look at it for the current year and for the next year. Health insurance is a biggie. You probably did not know this, but Georgia ranks in the top 5 states in the United States for benefits for teachers. I am going to share some information with you throughout this presentation, but these benefits are absolutely huge. And I think that if you've ever talked with other teachers from other states, they'll say to you, oh my goodness, we didn't have the opportunity to have that benefit. So the first benefit that I'm going to talk to you about is your health insurance. And Georgia has a state health benefit plan. The state pays part of your monthly premium for you. Actually, Georgia pays $945 every single solitary month for every employee that is on state health benefit plan. You pay the other part, it is withheld from your paycheck, and it is depending on your level of care. If you're young, you'll probably just want that bronze level. As you get older and you become a more senior educator, you might move to the silver or to the gold level, depending on if you have any health issues. That is a very minimal part. So state health benefit plan is an excellent opportunity for you to have quality insurance. The takeaway from this slide is you get to keep your insurance after you retire. You pay a small little premium, but you get to keep your insurance. So I'm going to give you myself as an example. I started teaching when I was 20. I spent 32 years in the schoolhouse. When I retired, I was 52 years old. I got to keep myself and my husband on the state health benefit plan, and I will get to keep us on that plan for the rest of our lives. If I had a child at home that was 26 years of age or younger, I would have been able to keep them on the state health benefit plan. The only other profession that we could find in Georgia that will allow this to happen is if you are a retired federal worker, example, you work for the Postal Service, or you're retired military. You are able to keep your insurance then. I think that those of you that are really taking notes on this have probably heard from your parents or your grandparents, and they say, I sure would like to retire when I am 65, because at 65, they get Medicare, which is their health insurance. But they say, I want to retire beforehand, but I can't do it. The reason why I can't do it, if I go out to find health insurance, it is very expensive. So again, the benefit of having health insurance as an educator in Georgia. And like I say, I have friends all over the United States, and I mention to them that I get to keep my health insurance, and they go, I worked for 35 years and I don't get to keep my health insurance. And that is a great perk of Georgia. All right, this comes into what you need to know about the money, and this is all about you. I want you to leverage your career so that you will leave education and have $10,000 of disposable money. You don't go to work for that. That's coming into you every single solitary month. But the only way to figure that out is to leverage your career. So I'm going to help you by going over 3 sources of income: Georgia Teacher Retirement, Social Security, and tax sheltered annuities. So let's go ahead and start with Georgia Teacher Retirement. And this is how Georgia Teacher Retirement works. Every single month that you get paid, Georgia Teacher Retirement takes out 6% of your salary. And they put it in a little savings plan. You don't get to say, no, I don't want you to do it. That is an automatic. The state contributes an additional 19.89%. So every single month, over 25% of your income goes into a little savings account called Georgia Teacher Retirement. And when you retire, you continue to get paid every single solitary month. So it is a great perk. I have been retired for 18 years, so I have received that benefit and I'll get to keep it for the rest of my life. But I want you to know how to figure this up so you can see how much money you are going to make for yourself. So in Georgia, you can retire after 30 years of service. For every year of service you have in Georgia, you get 2%. So 30 years times 2% is a product of 60. You take the product and you want to multiply it by the average of your 2 highest years of service. So in this example, this teacher never got an advanced degree. They just stayed with a T4 degree. They were in a rural school district. On year number 27, they were making $63,000 and some change. On year number 30, they were making $67,000 and some change. The average of those 2 highest years of service, $65,000 and some change. That teacher gets $39,500 a year or $3,300 a month. Divide that by 12, it's $3,300 a month. So let's make sure you understand it again. In Georgia, you can retire after 30 years of service. For every year of service, you get 2%. Take that product, and in this example, it's 60%. Take the product and you want to multiply it by the average of the 2 highest years of service. That is going to give you your yearly salary. Divide it by 12, and it's going to give you your monthly salary. So a couple weeks ago, about a month ago, I was at a college reunion, and one of my friends said to me, Diane, I taught for 40 years. And I went, wow. And I said, where did you teach? And she told me it was a metropolitan Atlanta County. And I went, okay. So I had to go further, and I said, Kathy, what kind of degree do you have? And she said, oh, I have a specialist. Now, remember at the very beginning, we talked about the salary schedule. And I said, the higher your degree, and she was T6, more years of experience down the left-hand side, the more money you're going to make. So Kathy had 40 years. She leveraged her payout. So 40 times 2% is a product of 80. 80, her T6 was right about 91,000. She's going to bring home about $6,200 or $6,300 per month. Okay, so Kathy leveraged her career by making sure she had an advanced degree. I mean, Georgia offers it. You need to make sure you get that advanced degree. It is going to help you, and it's going to help you for a payout, because you can see every time that you get an advanced degree, you're taking in $6,000 or $7,000 more, and then it helps you long range into your retirement. So for me, I had 32 years of service times 2%. I had 64%. 64%. I had a T7, I had a doctorate. That's going to up my salary, which is going to up my monthly salary. Now, there's one other caveat to this formula, and that is the age of 60. In Georgia, you can retire after 30 years of service or you're 60 years of age. This is what I find out from a lot of teachers. I worked the first 10 years of my life. Now I'm going to stay home and I am going to raise a family for 15 years. And I'm going to go back to work, and I'll probably just have 15 more years in before I turn 60. That's great. 10 years plus those 15 years, you've got 25%. 25% times 25 times 2% is going to give you a product of 50. So again, in Georgia, 30 years of service or 60 years of age. In Georgia, you are vested. That means you can get this as a defined benefit. When you retire, you're vested in 10 years. I've had one colleague who put 12 years in. She stayed at home. She had a specialist degree. When she was 60 years old, 12 times 2, product of 24%. With her specialist degree, she's got a nice little income coming in because she stayed over those 10 years, at least 10 years over. There's one other thing that I want to tell you that's so great about Georgia teacher retirement, and that is the fact that 2 times a year, every January 1 and every July 1, I get a salary increase to the tune of 1.5%. It's called the cost of living assistance. So this is what I want you to know about the COLA. Every January 1 and every July 1, as a retired teacher, you will get a pay raise. I knew that when I retired, and I would always tell my teachers, you're going to get a 1.5 cost of living increase also. But I never really knew what it was going to look like in my paycheck, and it was important to me. So I pulled my first paycheck from when I retired, and then I pulled my first paycheck after I had been retired for 15 years. My monthly salary went up $1,600. So it does make a difference. And I'm going to stop right here and answer any questions, because I normally have a lot of questions about Georgia teacher retirement. Anything from anybody, just unmute your mic and ask. Okay, we're going to go forward then. The second form of income is Social Security. Not all school systems in Georgia participate in Social Security. A matter of fact, we have over 40 school districts in Georgia that do not put into Social Security. Social Security is your FICA, okay? You can't contribute to FICA as an individual, but your employer contributes on your behalf. So remember, I told you at the very beginning, not all school districts are the same. They're not all equal. Social Security is one of those areas. Now I'm going to go back to this slide just to make sure you've got a visual. Here we are talking about $39.92 if it's just the state salary schedule. Some school districts will not contribute at all with FICA, and you're going to bring in $23.97. Those that contribute will take out $191.64 a month. And this is what your take-home pay would be. It would be less. So I want you to understand about Social Security because it is an important benefit. In Georgia, in order to get Social Security when you retire, you have to work the last 60 consecutive months or the last 5 years. 60 months is 5 years in a school district that participates in Social Security. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. I'm going to give you 3 examples to help you understand the Social Security / FICA benefit. Y'all probably know where Rockdale County is, south of the airport to the east off I-20. Rockdale County does not contribute to Social Security for their teachers. And on year number 25, they have a lot of educators who leave their school district. They just go across the line to Henry County. Henry County puts into Social Security for their educators. And those educators know I have 5 more years before retirement or 60 consecutive months. And I want to draw Social Security as a form of benefit when I retire. So again, there's some school districts that don't contribute. There's some that do. How do you find out? Well, you've got the opportunity to look on a website, but you're not going to find it on a website. Again, looking at the same thing as 12 equal paychecks or 13 equal paychecks. If you want to find out if a school district contributes to Social Security, you need to call them up, call HR, and you need to ask them. So I gave you one example, and that's the Rockdale Henry County example. I'm going to give you another example of my best friend. Gloria and I we're exercise partners, and we have exercised together for about 35 years. We exercise at least 5 days a week together. She's in one school district, I'm in another. And during the time we're exercising, we're talking about retirement. And she said, you know what? You just need to come over to my school district. You need to apply. You're going to be making more money a month. And I showed you that example just a second ago. And I said, I know, Gloria, I'd be making more money per month. But I want to have income coming in. I want to get up to the $10,000 mark that Diane said at the very beginning I could get you to. And I said, I want to have that as benefit. And she said, you know what? She said, I've worked for 19 years and contributed to Social Security. She said, I worked in high school. I worked all through college. I worked in 3 different states as a teacher, and I have contributed to Social Security. I'm going to have enough quarters. And I said, Gloria, I really want you to make sure that you ask a Social Security specialist, because that's not the way the law is written in Georgia. And that's because of the Windfall Elimination Act. And I said, so you really need to talk to a Social Security specialist. You're not going to get Social Security the way it is now. And she said, oh, yeah, I am. I have enough quarters. And I said, please go and talk with a Social Security specialist. Now, you ladies will understand this. You know how you tell your best friend, you know, you need to listen to me on this. It goes right over the head. They don't pay any attention to you. That was Gloria. She paid no attention to me. So 4 years later, 4 years ago, she retires. And the first thing she says to me is, you didn't tell me. I said, tell you what? And she said, I don't get any Social Security. And I went, I know you don't. Remember, we talked about it. And she said, and I didn't believe you. And I said, but I asked you to go talk with the Social Security specialist. So she just has her defined benefit of Georgia teacher retirement, and she doesn't have Social Security. So that's 2 examples. I'm putting these slides together. My husband says to me, you know what? This is a complicated scenario for young professionals. He said, why don't you just go down to Social Security and find out how much money you're going to make at full Social Security. I could start receiving Social Security at 62. For y'all, it's 63. Full Social Security for me was at 66. For y'all, it's at 67. So I went down to Social Security and I said, I want to take Social Security when I am 66 years old. Tell me how much money I will take in every single month. They said $2,804. And that is exactly how much money I get every single month. And then my husband said, you know what? You need to make sure that the students understand what the goal in our house was for Social Security. So the goal in our house has always been, when we both start drawing full Social Security, we're going to use that as our gravy. That is what we're going to use to go on vacations every single month. And we're either going to do it every single month, or we're going to put our combined Social Security together for 2 months and go on a really big vacation. So great opportunities with Social Security. And you have to decide how you want to leverage your career. There's one other form of income, and if your school district does not put into Social Security, you have to do this. And that is your tax sheltered annuity. It's your 403B, your 457, also known as your 401k. It is optional, but I suggest that you do it right away. And this is the reason why. If you at 22 start contributing to a tax sheltered annuity, at just if you had a salary of $34,000, you contributed 6%, you're going to have a 7% return. And when you retire, you'll have a nest egg of a little over $250,000. I did not do that the first year I was a teacher. And this is the reason why. I didn't understand it. I was 20 years old. What is this investment plan? What do you mean you take it out of my salary and I'll never know that it's taken out and it continues to grow? But my second year, I had a real wise principal, and he said to me, Diane, you need to do this and you need to do it right away. And he said, actually, I'm going to tell you the key to this. Every time you get an advanced degree, you contribute a little bit more money into your savings plan. And every time you get a step increase, you contribute a little bit more. And when you retire, you'll have $500,000 to $750,000 in your 401k, your 403b, or your 457. Don't wait until you're right at the end of your career. You may be making a salary of $60,000, but you're only going to get a 5% return, and you're not going to have any money in there. So this is a great way to really leverage your career. And like I told you at the very beginning of the presentation, or the beginning of the salary, I want you to have $10,000 of money coming in every single solitary month by having the Georgia Teacher Retirement, the Social Security, and the tax sheltered annuities. I'm going to send Ms. McKinney a video. It's called The $1 Million Wagon. And it has been approved by Georgia Teacher Retirement. And it shows a financial planner, and it shows him talking about a Georgia educator and how, as a Georgia educator, you can retire in the top 16% of the wealthiest Americans in the United States. So if somebody is financing your education and they're saying, I want you to get the best teaching job ever, you show them that 9-minute video that you're going to get, and you see if it makes a difference. I think that it probably will. But I'm living proof that all of these combined can get you over that $10,000 mark every single solitary month, and you will be much better off than 84% of the other Americans. Are there any questions on those 3 forms of income? Okay, let's go to another great benefit of being a Georgia educator, and that is sick leave days. You get 1.25 days of sick leave, can be used on yourself, your children, your parents, your immediate family. Unused sick leave can be applied to retirement if you have 60+ days. So that is the key. You've got to have 60 days. So I'm just going to go back a bit. To me, as an example, I had 32 years times 2%. I had a product of 64%. But every single month, I got a paycheck, and I printed that paycheck, that pay stub. And in the top right-hand corner, it had the number of days that I used. And then it also had the number of days that I had earned. Both of those numbers were extremely important because when I went down to Georgia Teacher Retirement, I had my little plastic bin with all of my little pay stubs in it. And they said, we have a formula for you to use, for us to use to see if you have 60 plus days. I went, no, you don't need to use that as a formula. This is my pay stubs right here for my entire 32 years. I had 1.8 years of unused sick leave. So leveraging my career, 32 years, plus 1.8 years on top of that, times 2%, I went from 64% to almost 68%. Almost 68% with a T7 upped my salary per year and upped it per month. So this is a very valuable opportunity for you to leverage your career. You have to have 60 plus days. I'm going to say over and over again, you need to keep your records because you can earn up to 2 years of sick leave, and you may just have 28 years. You may decide, I've got 2 years of unused sick leave. I'm going to apply that to my retirement, and I'm going to retire after 28 years. I want you to go ahead and I want you to turn to page number 30 or look at page number 30 in that link that Ms. McKinney sent you. And the page looks like this, and it's a dozen documents that you need to keep. I would put a paper clip on it. I put a sticky note on it, and I would put, keep this on in my possession for the first 5 years of my life. These are a dozen documents that you need to keep, and you need to keep your pay stubs because you may start in Oconee County, and then you may go over to Clark County, and then you may go down to Macon-Bibb, and you may finish out your career, 30-year career in Savannah-Chatham. All of those days go with you. But remember, when they go with you, it's always human error when they're taking all of your information and going from one school district to the other. I was at Piedmont University in Athens, and the professor stopped me and she said, Diane, I can't begin to tell you how important this concept needs to be for the students. And she said, I was one of those people that was in a school district for 23 years. I left that school district because they were not putting into Social Security, and I went to another school district right next door. And she said, when I left that first school district after 23 years, my family had had some medical problems and I had been out of school. I had 77.5 days. But when I went to that neighboring school district, human error, instead of putting in 77.5, they put in 0.5. When I retired, I did not have the 60 plus days. And I know that I would have had it if I would have had well over that with my 77. So keeping your records is very, very important. And I was so happy that she provided that information. All right, let's go on to a couple of other things. You all know where you get your driver's license. This is not a trick question, but you get it from the DMV. But when I ask where you get your teaching license, I have this pause and people think, well, where do I get this teaching license? You get it from the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, GAPSC. They're part of the state, separate from the Georgia Department of Education. They make the rules about what teachers have to do and to get and to keep their teaching certificates. In Georgia, we have tiered certification. You have a pre-certificate right now, pre-service certificate. You've been admitted to the College of Education. You have established your MyPSC account. You've had a criminal background check excuse me, and you've completed the code of ethics. When you get a teaching job, you will get an induction certificate. As you will see on here, you have to have a teaching job. You have 3 years or less experience, completed your degree, you've passed ethics exam, and you've passed your GACE exam. There are 2 more levels, professional and advanced lead professional, and I'm going to leave that to your principals to talk to you about. Georgia was the 41st state in the United States that went to tiered certification, and the rest of them have come on board. They're different in most every single state. So you're ready to be hired. Some of you have signed contracts. This is what I want you to do. You need to look at the start date and the end date. You need to check the school calendar against the number of days on the contract. If they gave you some extra days as a brand new teacher, which they probably have, you need to make sure it is reflected on your contract. Look at the termination/liquidation clause. That termination/liquidation clause in your contract is gotten really big because there is a teacher shortage. And what it shows is you may have to get out of your contract. Say your spouse is moving across the country. If you have to get out of your contract, they will only let you out if they find a suitable replacement. They may find a suitable replacement and let you out of your contract, but you're still going to have to pay. And I recently just saw one school district, it was $5,200. Look at the termination/liquidation clause in your contract. Make sure your salary is correct. And always remember that your contract is with the school system, not a particular school. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the state legislature. They're on day 38 right now. They work at the intersection of the education policy and politics. So here we are, folks. This is you in your little classroom, and you're just teaching your little heart out. Every November, just this past November, you voted for your state legislators, not the ones that go to Washington, the ones that stay right here in Georgia, your state representatives and your state senators. And you have your governor that you voted on, Governor Kemp. And what Governor Kemp does is he brings them in for 40 days of a legislative session, January 8th and through the last day, 40 days, and it looks like it may be, today's Wednesday, it looks like it will be Friday of this week. The only thing he is required to ask them to do is to balance the budget. Well, all of a sudden, these folks start looking at, where do we have pots of money to balance a budget? Oh, you mean to tell me I give $945 a month for a teacher for their state health benefit plan? No. Let's just get some pots of money there. Let's cut that in half. Let's just give them $500. What do you think is going to happen to your insurance? The quality is going to go down. The cost is going to go up. But those legislators are looking for pots of money. Actually, the legislators could look for another pot of money, and they could look at the benefit of your defined benefit, your Georgia teacher retirement. And you know what? There's $84 billion in Georgia teacher retirement. Let's just kind of siphon off that for a little bit. Let's not give that 1.5 cost of living increase at all. So once you retire, your salary would stay the same for the rest of your life. Or what if they say, you know what, $84 billion, that's a lot of money. Instead of giving educators 2% for every year of service in your Georgia teacher retirement, let's just give them 1%. They gave you 1% times 30 years, they've just cut your salary in half. Okay. These people are very, very influential, but I don't believe any of them could do the job that you do in your classroom every single solitary day. You ask them to come in there with a group of special ed kids, with a group of kindergartners, with a group of high school students in biology, chemistry, math, with middle schoolers for an hour or 2 hours, they could not do it. What you need to remember is that you affect the greatest resource that Georgia has, and that is our students. But these legislators are so powerful that they define teacher salaries, class size, all of your benefits, your health and benefit, Georgia teacher retirement, graduation. They look at your sick leave days. They look at teacher evaluation, curriculum, testing, and the number of school days. So if I could say anything to you, you need to be a lobbyist for your career and yourself. If you see something that they are voting on and you know that it's going to be detrimental to the students and to educators, you need to call up your legislator and you need to talk to them about what you do every single day. They'll never know unless you tell them. You need to be kind, you need to be respectful, build that partnership with them, and they'll be coming back to you over and over and over again. Now, I have said, I'm going to stop this share right here. I have said a lot of things. I want to know what kinds of questions you have. And I think Ajane and Reagan, you may be monitoring the chat. You might want to read those to me, and if I can answer any of them, or if y'all can raise your hand.
Oh, of course, we have 3 in the Q&A box right now. I'll just go in the order that they were sent.
Okay.
That first one says, is retirement only at 30 years? For example, can I retire at 25?
You could only retire at 25 if you were at 60 years of age. Okay. We have career educators, second career educators. They've had a career doing something else. They come in, they might work 15, 18 years, and they say, I'm 60. They can retire at that age.
Great. The second question says, how does Georgia teaching certification work across states?
Okay. Most of the time in our neighboring states, Tennessee and Alabama, there's reciprocity. You still have to apply for a certificate. And you're usually on a probationary certificate until all the information comes in. But for those 2 states, for sure, there's reciprocity. Every state is different, so you just have to dig. And I was given this presentation to doctoral students at KSU, and there was a man in there from New Jersey, and he said, can you come up here and do this for my students? They need I don't know anything about New Jersey. You just have to do the digging. Y'all are very lucky in Georgia. I am very lucky in Georgia. It ranks in the top 5 states in the United States in benefits, and you know the reason why now.
And then our third question we have says, does retirement money from Georgia's retirement plans transfer across states?
Does it transfer across states? No, it does not. So if you ever had to move, I would say you need to be very, very cautious about your money in Georgia teacher retirement. And if you have those 10 years and you are vested, you may want to keep your money in there depending on what state you go to. I have had several colleagues, coworkers, teachers who have taken their money out of Georgia teacher retirement. When they quit, they thought they were never going to go back to teaching. And then they decided, well, I'm going to go back to teaching. And I had one professor in particular, she had 7 years. She took out all her money in Georgia teacher retirement. And that's just the 6%. That's not the 19.89% state puts on it and the interest on top. It's just the 6%, which she didn't realize. She bought furniture for her 2 girls, bedroom furniture for her 2 girls. When she wanted to go back and buy those 7 years back, she had to pay the 6% plus the 19.89% plus the interest on top of that. It came to $180,000, and it was just cost prohibitive in her family. So be very cautious about your Georgia teacher retirement because it is the best of the best.
Good.
Any other questions?
One, it just came in, or there's 2 more. So it says, is TIAA-CREF the same as TSA that you mentioned earlier?
I think that is an insurance company that is providing some kind of tax sheltered annuities. They have that VALIC, Corebridge, Ameriprise Financial. I'm not sure exactly. That sounds like one of them, but they'll come in, they'll talk to you. The most important thing is you tell them you want to make an appointment with them, have them come to your classroom, you go into their office, you bring your parents in with you, you bring your significant other, sit down and talk about a savings plan now. Because if you do that, you're going to have a good nest egg there that's going to bring in probably about another $4,400 a month.
Okay. This one is a little bit more specific. It says, if I have 4 years of credible service and I get retirement taken out for each paycheck as a paraprofessional, does that count in the left-hand column on the salary sheet, or only years as a T4 and higher would count on that salary sheet?
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what salary sheet that they're talking about, but those years are a little bit different than TRS, because I believe that they're putting into employee retirement system. So I want them to talk with, because every county is so different and those sheets are so different. Yesterday I had somebody from Jones County. I said, I'm sorry, I haven't seen that sheet before. I want them to go to HR and to talk with one of their specialists in that department.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have right now.
Okay, I'm going to send to Ms. McKinney 2 things. One is a cheat sheet, I call it. It's the 12 important points that I talked about tonight. So you should know all of those things. It will help you with the formula again. The second thing is that 9-minute video, the $1 Million Wagon. Watch it. Whoever's financing your education, make sure they watch it too. I think they'll be happy. My best to you. You're going to be terrific teachers. Georgia needs you. I hope that you stay in Georgia. Thank you.